And now back to Bobby Likis Car Clinic and your host, Bobby Likis.
Chris in Pennsylvania. Then I see that we have Jim and Bill and Rex and Rudolph and Victor. So Victor will come to you next in Washington, but now in Pennsylvania. Chris, welcome to Bobby Likis Car Clinic. Thank you for holding.
Thank you for taking my call, Bobby.
My pleasure, sir.
Long-time listener, second-time caller.
Well, welcome back.
I've got a 2005 Subaru Baja, non-turbo. Love the vehicle. My question is, when it's really cold outside and I first start the vehicle, it'll climb up to 3,000, 3,500 RPM before it'll settle down to a reasonable RPM. I know you're not supposed to do that with a cold engine, but how do I fix it?
There must be false air because the door that feeds the engine air that bypasses the throttle control, and this is not 100% correct or applicable to all cars because some vehicles use electric motors and drive-by-wire to open the throttle and literally do open the throttle to reach RPM. That RPM should not exceed 1,500 RPM. 16 at the most.
Well,
So
it's doing almost double that.
Well, I know, and so therefore there is a problem, and it has nothing to do with and the cold weather is not causing it. The cold weather would make it go up to the 1,600, but something else is causing it to go beyond that. So, so what would it be? Okay, it could be false air, which means that. And let me explain this first. All of the air that goes through your Subaru or any engine must come through the mouth of the engine.
Right.
So if you taped my mouth shut and pinched my nose, no air would get into my lungs. In the same way, if you closed the throttle plate of an engine, unless you had a nose on the engine, you'd have no air to get in. Now, some engines do have a nose. They have what I call a side door, and that side door is controlled. The opening of that side door is controlled by a motor, and it's it's the air control. Mm-hmm. And your Subaru probably has one of those. But even on a bad day, the size of that opening, if it failed, it being the controller failed, and that side door were to be stuck in a wide open position, it's only large enough to allow about 1,500 RPM. I mean, to the best of my knowledge and my experience. So I'm going to say to you that there must be false air, and the only challenge that I have making that statement is that it corrects itself, and the false air would not correct itself. If it had a vacuum leak or intake manifold leak, it would be there hot and cold. Sure, it would. When the engine gets warm, it's going to swell up a joint like an exhaust. You know, you can have an exhaust that will leak when it's cold, and then when the exhaust manifold gets hot, it and it quietens up.
Right.
But on the intake, that's not as applicable, and certainly not within. I'm assuming you're talking about within less than a minute. It calms down. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So I believe it to be the throttle control. The first thing that a technician will want to do is to clean the throttle body, and if your vehicle has the throttle air control module, I would suggest that you remove it and clean it, because in that same arena around the mouth and the nose of the engine, there's also an EGR valve, and that means that the exhaust gas is distributed in that area, which is a lot of debris. That's just what happens. So a cleaning of the mouth of the engine, i.e. the throttle body, and the nose, which is the air controller, would be my first inspection. And other than that, we could summation all day long. We could surmise and do those things. But anyway,
every other circumstance, it runs perfectly.
I got you.
Just that.
And so here's what I would suggest that you do. I would suggest that you, by all means, talk to your local service shop, whether it's a new car dealer or your frequent one that you frequent, and have this same conversation and say, I'm going to come down Monday afternoon or some afternoon and leave my car, and I want you to put it in a safe place so that you can crank it up cold in the morning to experience what I'm experiencing. Otherwise, there's no point in taking your car in because it's going to heal itself, and so it's got to be there overnight. So don't take it in the morning and expect for them to know how to find the problem, because they only have one shot, and that's less than a minute to find it. You're on board?
Right.
Okay.
I get you.
Hey, thanks for calling, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thank you. You're welcome,
Bye.
Chris. We'll go to Victor now.